When the Galactic Academy called humans primitive, they had no idea they were studying a species that survived every war by becoming smarter, deadlier, and more disciplined than before. This is the story of why the galaxy is safe from humans only because humans are still choosing restraint. Vextar leaned back in his neural sync chair, all four of his arms crossed in what could only be described as maximum smugness. The Zentari student had aced every combat simulation thrown at him this semester, and he knew it. His exoskeleton gleamed under the blue-white lights of Station Luminos, Classroom 742, where the galaxy's best and brightest gathered to study advanced warfare studies. Another perfect score, he announced to nobody in particular, though his mandibles clicked with satisfaction loud enough for the entire class to hear. Honestly, I am starting to think this course is too easy. Plix, the small Quellan sitting 2 rows ahead, made a chirping sound that might have been agreement or might have been terror. With Quellans it was hard to tell. They were nervous creatures by nature, with their translucent skin and their 3 eyes that blinked in rotation, never all at once. Rinna, the Telmorian exchange student, simply hummed a disapproving tone. Her species prided themselves on peaceful resolution, which made her presence in a warfare studies class something of a paradox. But then again, knowing your enemy, or so the saying went, was half the battle. Settle down, settle down. Professor Kelmore's voice boomed across the amphitheater-style classroom. The old Dramaxian war veteran had seen actual combat in the Fringe Wars, and his scarred carapace proved it. He moved to the hollow display at the front of the room with the careful gait of someone who had replaced at least 3 limbs with cybernetics. I trust you all enjoyed last week's module on Kryn siege tactics. Murmurs of assent rippled through the 30-odd students. Primitive but effective, Vextar called out, because of course he did. Kelmore's optical ridge, what humans might call an eyebrow if Dramaxians had such things, raised slightly. Interesting you should say that, Vextar, because this week we are beginning a new unit, one that I suspect will challenge your definitions of primitive and effective. The professor tapped his data slate and the hollow display flickered to life. A blue and green planet rotated slowly in the air, white clouds swirling across its surface. Earth, Kelmore announced. Vextar snorted, which was quite a feat considering Zentari did not have noses. The humans, the soft pink things that recently joined the Galactic Council, what could they possibly teach us about warfare? They have been space-worthy for what, barely 200 cycles, 143 to be precise, Kelmore corrected, and his mandibles curved into what experienced students recognized as a smile, a dangerous smile. But their combat history, well, that goes back just a bit further, several thousand years further in fact. The hollow display shifted, and suddenly the classroom was looking at a narrow mountain pass. Rocky cliffs rose on either side, and the simulation showed small figures, humans, arranging themselves in tight formation. The Battle of Thermopylae, Professor Kelmore began, his voice taking on that lecture hall cadence that meant he was about to drop knowledge bombs. Year 380 before their common era, a force of approximately 7,000 Greeks, led by 300 Spartans, held a pass against, conservative estimates here, 150,000 Persian invaders. For how long? Rinna asked, her melodic voice curious. 3 days. Vextar's primary arms uncrossed. That is, well, that is a significant numerical disadvantage. Oh, it gets better, Kelmore said, and was that amusement in his voice? The Spartans, these 300 warriors, they were trained from age 7 cycles old, mind you, taken from their parents and subjected to something they called the ago, brutal physical conditioning, weapons training, survival exercises. They were taught to never retreat, never surrender. The hollow display zoomed in, showing the Spartan phalanx, shields locked, spears bristling outward like the quills of a thoraxian spine beast. Their shields weighed approximately 8 kilograms. Their spears, the Dori, were nearly 3 meters long, and they fought in formation so tight that when one man fell, the warrior behind him would step forward without breaking stride. No hesitation, no fear. Plix's 3 eyes were blinking rapidly now, all sense of pattern abandoned. But surely they had some kind of tactical advantage. Advanced technology, superior armor, bronze, Kelmore stated flatly. They had bronze armor, wooden shields covered in bronze and iron discipline. Oh, and when the Persian king Xerxes sent a messenger demanding they surrender their weapons, the Spartan king Leonidas sent back a 2-word reply. He paused for effect. Mullen Labe, come and take them. A few students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They all died, of course. The professor continued, almost cheerfully. But they killed approximately 20,000 Persians first. 20,000. That is a kill ratio of, let me see, roughly 66 to 1. Vextelvor's mandibles had stopped clicking. The display shifted again, showing a different scene. Organized columns of soldiers marching in perfect synchronization, their armor gleaming red and gold. And then we have the Romans, Kelmore said. Oh, the Romans. Beautiful, terrifying, absolutely relentless Romans. They took the concept of military organization and turned it into an art form. Legions of approximately 5,000 men, divided into cohorts, divided into centuries, each with specific roles and functions. The simulation showed Roman soldiers building, not fighting. Building roads, bridges, fortifications. They conquered most of their known world over the course of several centuries. But here is the really fun part. Every Roman soldier, every single one, was also an engineer. They marched 20 miles per day in full armor, carrying equipment weighing up to 45 kilograms. And when they stopped for the night, they did not just camp. They built fortified positions, every single night. Walls, ditches, palisades, full defensive structures that they would abandon the next morning. That seems excessive, Rena ventured. That seems victorious, Kelmore corrected. They had a saying, civis pacem pata bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. And they prepared constantly. Their military training manuals were so detailed that we found copies buried in the ground for 2,000 years, and they were still usable as tactical guides. Vextel was very quiet now. Around the classroom, students were exchanging glances, concerned glances. Professor, Plix squeaked, his voice barely above a whisper. This is their ancient history, their primitive era. Kelmore's smile widened. Oh, my dear students, we have not even reached the medieval period yet. And trust me when I say it gets so much worse. The hollow display transformed once more, and a massive stone structure materialized in the center of the classroom. Towers reaching toward the sky, walls thick enough to drive a cargo transport through, and a moat surrounding the entire complex. Welcome to the medieval period, Professor Kelmore announced. Humans called these fortifications castles. Some had walls up to 8 meters thick. 8 meters of solid stone topped with defensive positions surrounded by multiple layers of protection. Impressive defenses, Vextsur managed, trying to regain some of his earlier confidence. So they learned to hide behind walls. Not exactly warrior spirit, is it? Kelmore chuckled, a sound like rocks grinding together. Hide? Oh no, Vextelvorn. These were not hiding places. These were force multipliers. A properly defended castle could hold out against armies 50 times larger for months, sometimes years. The siege of Rochester Castle in the year 1215, 95 defenders held off an entire royal army. And when the attackers finally breached the walls using 40 fat pigs as incendiary devices, yes, you heard that correctly, burning pigs to collapse a tower, the defenders retreated to the inner keep and kept fighting. Runa's harmonious humming had taken on a distinctly distressed quality. This sounds unnecessarily prolonged. Why not negotiate? Reach diplomatic solutions? Oh, they tried that too, the professor said. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes the negotiations ended with defenders catapulting diseased corpses over the walls to spread plague among the attackers, or attackers catapulting the heads of captured prisoners back at the defenders. Medieval humans had a certain flair for psychological warfare. The display shifted to show horsemen, thousands upon thousands of them sweeping across vast plains. And then we have the Mongols, Kelmore continued, his tone almost reverent. Genghis Khan and his descendants conquered approximately 24 million square kilometers of territory, that is 16% of Earth's entire landmass. They built the largest contiguous land empire in human history. How many soldiers? Someone in the back asked. At their peak, roughly 100,000 in the main army. They conquered territories containing populations in the hundreds of millions. Plix made a choking sound. They were mobile, adaptable, and absolutely merciless. When the city of Baghdad refused to surrender in the year 1258, the Mongols killed an estimated 200,000 to 1 million people. The Tigris River reportedly ran black with ink from all the books they threw in, then ran red with blood. Rena stood abruptly. I cannot. This level of violence is incomprehensible. Surely this was their darkest period. Surely after this they evolved past such barbarism. Vextower nodded eagerly, grasping at the same hope. Yes. Yes. They must have developed beyond this, reached enlightenment, became civilized. Professor Kelmore's expression could only be described as pitying. Students, here is what you need to understand about human history. Those periods between major wars, those eras they call peacetime, those were not periods of evolution beyond violence, those were periods of preparation for the next war. He pulled up a timeline showing Earth's history marked with conflicts. The red markers indicating wars were so numerous they almost formed a solid line. The medieval period alone saw the Crusades, the 100 Years' War, which despite its name actually lasted 116 years, the Mongol invasions, the Wars of the Roses and countless smaller conflicts, and each single time, humans emerged with new innovations in killing, better weapons, better armor, better tactics. This timeline, Vextelvor said slowly, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. There are barely any gaps, correct, and we have not even discussed gunpowder yet. The entire class went very, very still. Professor Kelmore dimmed the classroom lights and the hollow display expanded to fill nearly the entire space. A trench appeared, stretching endlessly in both directions. Mud, barbed wire and the unmistakable evidence of carnage. World War I, the professor said quietly. 1914 to 1918, 4 years, 3 months, and 14 days, 40 nations involved, 70 million military personnel mobilized. The number appeared in the air, glowing an ominous red. 70 million, casualty count. Kelmore continued, approximately 40 million, 20 million dead, 21 million wounded. In 4 years, Vextaur's mandibles hung open. The clicking had stopped entirely. They fought from trenches, the professor explained, as the simulation showed the brutal reality. Kilometers upon kilometers of ditches dug into the earth, filled with soldiers living in mud, surrounded by rats, disease and the constant threat of death. They would go over the top, charging across no man's land into machine gun fire. The hollow display showed waves of soldiers climbing out of trenches, running forward, falling in massive numbers. The Battle of the Somme. First day, July 1st, 1916. The British Army suffered 57,000 casualties. In one day, students, 19,000 of those were deaths. In one single day of fighting, Rhina had sat back down but was now covering her eye stalks with her upper appendages. And they kept fighting, Kelmore said. Day after day, month after month. They invented new ways to kill, poison gas that dissolved your lungs from the inside, flamethrowers that turned living beings into walking pyres, tanks, armored vehicles that could cross trenches and crush barbed wire, and anyone unfortunate enough to be underneath. Plix was making a continuous high-pitched whine now. But wait, the professor said, and his tone suggested that somehow, impossibly, it got worse. Wait, because 21 years after that war ended, the one they called the War to End All Wars, they started another one. The display changed. Bombers flying overhead, cities in flames, mushroom clouds rising into the sky. World War II. 1939 to 1945. 6 years. Estimated deaths, 70 to 85 million people. That is approximately 3% of the entire human population at the time. Military and civilian combined. The classroom was silent except for Plix's whining and the hum of the hollow display. They bombed cities into rubble. The city of Dresden, firebombed to the point where the air itself ignited, creating a firestorm that reached temperatures of 1500 degrees Celsius. Tokyo, similar treatment, conventional explosives and incendiaries that killed an estimated 100,000 in a single night. Vextelvor tried to speak, failed, tried again. Surely that was their limit, their maximum capacity for destruction. Professor Kelmore looked at him with something approaching sympathy.
Oh Vextel, we have not even discussed nuclear weapons yet.
He pulled up an image. A single bomb, sleek and terrifying in its simplicity. August 6, 1945. Hiroshima, Japan. One bomb, one single bomb dropped from one aircraft. Yield approximately 15 kilotons of TNT equivalent. Immediate deaths, 80,000. Total deaths including radiation effects, 220,000. The numbers hung in the air like an accusation. 3 days later they did it again. Nagasaki. 70,000 immediate deaths. But those weapons, Rhina whispered, her voice shaking. Those are banned now, yes. Destroyed. Eliminated from their arsenal. Kelmore's laugh was bitter. Banned? No. As of their current date, humanity possesses approximately 13,000 nuclear warheads, the largest ever detonated. The Tsar Bomba, tested by the Soviet Union in 1961, had a yield of 50 megatons. That is 3,300 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Why? Vextelvor asked, and his voice cracked. All 4 of his arms had dropped to his sides. Why would they build such things? Why would they create weapons capable of destroying their entire species? Deterrence, the professor replied. They call it mutually assured destruction. Mad. If everyone has the capability to end civilization, the theory goes, nobody will actually use it, and so far they have been right. They have not used nuclear weapons in warfare since 1945. So far, Plix repeated weakly. So far, Kelmore agreed. But here is the truly fascinating part, students. These weapons, these city destroyers, these civilization enders, humans have had them for 80 years. 80 years of living with the power to annihilate themselves. And they have chosen not to. They have shown restraint. He paused, letting that sink in. Which brings us to the question, does it not? If this is them showing restraint, what exactly are they capable of when they do not hold back? Nobody answered. Nobody could. Professor Kelmore waved his manipulator appendage, and the hollow display shifted to show dense jungle terrain. Small groups of humans moved through the undergrowth, nearly invisible despite the high-resolution imaging. Modern human warfare, he began, operates on levels most species cannot even comprehend. Let us start with what they call Special Operations Forces. The display zoomed in on a team of 6 humans heavily equipped, moving in perfect coordination through hostile territory. These are not regular soldiers. These are humans selected from the already elite military forces, put through training that has a failure rate exceeding 70%. They learn to operate in any environment: desert, Arctic, jungle, urban, underwater, high altitude. They can deploy anywhere on their planet within 18 hours. A new image appeared, showing a human suspended in freezing water, another buried in sand with only breathing apparatus visible, another dangling from a helicopter over mountainous terrain. Their training includes something called SARE, survival, evasion, resistance, escape. They are deliberately subjected to interrogation techniques, starvation, extreme temperatures, all to prepare them for capture. And the success stories, students, the success stories are terrifying. Kelmore pulled up a mission profile. Operation Neptune Spear. 23 humans flew deep into foreign territory, located one specific individual among millions, eliminated him and extracted without losing a single operator. Total mission time under 40 minutes. One target? Rena asked. They mobilized that much resources for one individual? When humans decide someone is a threat, they commit fully. But that is just kinetic operations. Let us talk about chemical and biological warfare capability. The display showed molecular structures, complex compounds rotating in 3-dimensional space. Humans have developed nerve agents like VX, so toxic that less than 10 milligrams on skin contact can kill an adult human. They have engineered biological weapons, weaponized anthrax, smallpox variants, hemorrhagic fever viruses. They have the scientific knowledge to create pathogens that could devastate their entire species. Plix had stopped whining and started rocking back and forth in his seat. And yet, the professor continued, they signed treaties banning these weapons. The Chemical Weapons Convention, the Biological Weapons Convention. They created these horrors, realized what they had done, and collectively agreed to never use them. Most nations have destroyed their stockpiles. Most. Vextel caught the qualifier. Most. But the knowledge remains. The capability remains. And that brings us to the newest battlefield, cyberspace. The hollow display filled with cascading data streams, network diagrams, lines of code scrolling faster than most species could process. Humans fight wars now in dimensions that do not physically exist. They infiltrate enemy networks, steal information, disable infrastructure, all without firing a single shot. The Stuxnet virus, created in the early 21st century, physically destroyed nuclear centrifuges in Iran by manipulating their operational speeds. A computer program caused physical destruction in the real world. New images appeared, showing satellite networks, communication grids, financial systems. They can track individuals anywhere on their planet using orbital satellites, intercept communications across entire continents, manipulate financial markets to destabilize economies, and they do this while simultaneously maintaining conventional military forces, special operations teams, and nuclear arsenals. Kelmore turned to face the class directly. Do you understand what I am telling you? Humans wage warfare on every conceivable level, all at once. Physical combat, yes, but also information warfare, economic warfare, psychological warfare, cyber warfare, and they maintain the capacity for weapons of mass destruction as a last resort. A student in the back, a Threnody named Kix, who had been silent until now, raised a tentacle. Professor, Their endurance. You mentioned training in extreme conditions. How extreme are we discussing? Excellent question. Kelmore pulled up environmental data. Human special forces have operated in temperatures ranging from minus 50 degrees Celsius in the Arctic to plus 50 degrees in desert environments. They have conducted missions at altitudes where the oxygen content is 60% of sea level. They can function for days without sleep through chemical enhancement or sheer willpower. One documented case, he continued, involved a human named Marcus Luttrell who survived for 4 days in the mountains of Afghanistan with multiple gunshot wounds, a broken back and shrapnel injuries, evading enemy forces the entire time. He crawled 7 miles to reach friendly forces. That is not possible, Vextower stammered. No species can function with those injuries. Human adrenaline response is unique in the galaxy, Kelmore replied. Combined with their pain tolerance and their absolute refusal to quit, they can accomplish things that should biologically be impossible. They have a saying, the only easy day was yesterday. Rinna's humming had become almost a moan. They never stop. They never rest. They just keep finding new ways to fight. Correct, the professor said simply. And now, let us discuss their philosophy of warfare. Professor Kelmore brought up a series of text fragments, quotes floating in the air like ghosts of human thought. Humans have spent as much time thinking about war as they have waging it, he said. Perhaps more. Listen to these. The first quote expanded. All warfare is based on deception, attributed to someone named Sun Tzu, written approximately 2,500 years ago. 2.5 millennia, Kelmore emphasized. They understood strategic deception before most of our species had discovered fire. Here is another. In war, truth is the first casualty. They know what war does, not just to bodies but to information, to societies, to truth itself. Another quote appeared. War is hell. Short, simple, and from a human general named William Tecumseh Sherman. They have no illusions about what they are doing, the professor explained. They do not glorify it, despite what their ancient stories might suggest. They know exactly what war costs, and yet they prepare for it anyway. The phrase si vis pacem, parabellum, appeared again, larger this time. We discussed this earlier. If you want peace, prepare for war. This is not bravado, students. This is their fundamental survival strategy. Every major human nation maintains standing militaries during peacetime. They spend trillions of their currency units on defense budgets annually, not because they want war but because they believe preparation prevents it. Vex Telfor spoke up, his voice much quieter than before. But the nuclear weapons, the MAID doctrine you mentioned, that is insane. Building weapons that guarantee your own destruction if you use them. Is it? Kelmore challenged. Since the invention of nuclear weapons in 1945, major powers have not engaged in direct warfare with each other. Proxy conflicts. Yes. Economic competition. Certainly. But total war between nuclear-armed states. 0 occurrences. The fear of mutual annihilation has prevented more deaths than perhaps any treaty or alliance in their history. He pulled up statistics showing global conflict deaths over time. Believe it or not, humans are currently living in the most peaceful era of their entire recorded history. Deaths from warfare as a percentage of population are at historic lows, because they are too afraid to fight. Flix asked hopefully. No, Kelmore corrected, because they have made the cost of fighting too high. They have mathematically calculated the futility of total war and chosen alternatives. That requires remarkable self-control. A new quote appeared. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Another from Sun Tzu. This is what you must understand, the professor said, his tone serious. Humans have developed the capacity to extinguish all life on their planet multiple times over. They possess weapons that could turn their world into an irradiated wasteland. They have engineered diseases that could kill billions. They have created artificial intelligence systems for warfare that could theoretically operate without human oversight. He paused, looking at each student in turn, and they choose not to use these things. They write treaties limiting their use. They create international laws governing warfare. They establish rules of engagement that protect civilians. They have something called the Geneva Conventions, agreements that specify how even in war there are lines that should not be crossed. Vextower's exoskeleton seemed to sag. I thought they were weak, soft, new to the galactic stage and naive about the realities of conflict. And now? Kelmore prompted. Now I think, Vextelvor said slowly, that they are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and the only reason we are safe is because they have decided to be civilized. We are alive because of human restraint, not human weakness. Precisely, the professor said. Which brings us to our final topic. What happens when humans decide the rules no longer apply? The holo display now showed a document, pages upon pages of text in multiple languages. The Geneva Conventions, Professor Kelmore announced, 4 treaties, and 3 additional protocols that define international humanitarian law. They specify how wounded soldiers must be treated, how prisoners of war must be handled, how civilians must be protected, even what weapons are prohibited. He highlighted specific sections: no targeting medical personnel, no torture of prisoners, no use of certain ammunition types designed to cause unnecessary suffering, no attacking cultural sites. The list goes on. Rena looked genuinely confused, her earlier distress replaced by bafflement. Wait, they created rules for how to conduct war? They have laws about the proper way to kill each other? Exactly, Kelmore confirmed. And violating these rules constitutes what they call war crimes. Individuals can be prosecuted, tried in international courts, and imprisoned for breaking the rules of warfare. But, Kix the Threnody interjected, war is by definition the breakdown of civil order. Why would anyone follow rules when engaged in lethal combat? Because, the professor said, humans understand something most species do not. Unlimited warfare leads to extinction, so they limit themselves. They agree collectively across nations and cultures that normally hate each other that certain things are off limits even in conflict. He pulled up current military inventories. Right now, as we sit here, humanity possesses hypersonic missiles that can strike anywhere on their planet in under an hour. They have drone swarms that can operate autonomously. They have directed energy weapons, railguns, and artificial intelligence systems that could coordinate warfare on scales we can barely comprehend. New data appeared, showing research programs. They are developing exoskeletons that enhance soldier strength tenfold, neural interfaces that allow thought-based weapons control, nanotechnology for medical treatment in the field. They are making their soldiers stronger, faster, harder to kill. And all of this, Vextelfor said quietly, all of this is them holding back, following their own rules. Correct. The most terrifying human weapons are not the ones they have used. They are the ones they have agreed never to use. Blinding lasers banned. Expanding bullets banned. Chemical weapons banned. Biological weapons banned. They possess the knowledge and capability to deploy all of these, and they choose not to. Plix raised a shaking appendage. What happens if they stop choosing restraint? If they decide the rules no longer matter? Professor Kelmore deactivated the holo display, and the classroom lights came back up. The sudden normalcy was almost jarring after the horrors they had witnessed. Then, he said simply, we pray we are not on the receiving end, because a human military operating without rules, without restraint, without the ethical limitations they impose on themselves, that would be an extinction-level threat to any species foolish enough to provoke it. The silence that followed was absolute. Class dismissed. The words hung in the air, but nobody moved immediately. Students sat processing, their various forms of body language all conveying the same thing: shock, fear, and newfound respect. Vextelvar remained in his seat long after the others had filed out quietly. No conversations, no usual post-lecture clatter. His forearms hung limply, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated like morning dew under a harsh sun. Soft pink things, he muttered to himself. I called them soft pink things. Professor Kelmore was gathering his data slates but paused. A learning experience, yes. They are not warriors despite their nature, Vextelvar said slowly, working through the realization. They are warriors who choose peace. That is so much worse, or so much better, Kelmore replied. Depends on whether you are their friend or their enemy. Vextel finally stood, his movements careful, deliberate, like someone who had just survived a near-death experience. He looked at the now empty holo display where Earth had rotated peacefully just hours before. I need to reconsider my entire approach to galactic relations, he said. Most do. The professor agreed after this unit. The lesson was clear. Humans are dangerous not because they love war, but because they understand its cost. Their greatest weapon has never been force. It has always been discipline.